Hi, my name is Rod Shutt, and I am the program coordinator for the Prescription Drug Assistance Network. And what we do is we help people who cannot afford their medications find ways to access them. And so we have a little PowerPoint presentation for you, and hopefully this will provide some information that you'll find useful. So what we do mostly is assist individuals to get signed up for patient assistance programs. These programs are generally from the manufacturer and are often referred to as PAPs. They were initially designed for people with no insurance, but there are many of the programs have procedures and exceptions that make those programs available to Medicare D patients, which is largely who we're going to be talking about today. These programs usually provide medications for which there is not a generic alternative, but that's not always the case. And so if you have questions around that, there'll be a way to get in touch with me. We'll talk about later in the webinar. And either me or my my colleague in Spokane would be happy to help you out with those. So if you're looking for a program, one of the best ways that I know to find information is with one of these 4 portals. And there are databases of various programs. The one I use most is Needy Meds because it gives you search by the medication, and it gives you information on the different programs that that medication can be obtained from, and it has information about whether or not Medicare D patients are eligible, because sometimes they're not. The others, I would recommend playing around with them a little bit, see what works for you. Like I said, it's not a right or wrong answer here. That it's some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla. It's one of those things. So whatever works for you. So how does a patient get medications from an assistance program? Now, so there's more than 400 programs out there. And so that's why you need the databases to find the right program. For people who are uninsured, enrollment in the programs is generally for 1 year. For people who have insurance, like Medicare D, the enrollment generally follows the calendar year. So you have to, after the 1st of January, requalify for the program. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But for Medicare D patients, that's sometimes a bit of a hardship. All of these different programs have different eligibility requirements, documentation needed, different application procedures, and have different distribution methods. It's eligibility requirements. There's usually always there is an income test that the patient has to meet, and the income limit can vary by program. Sometimes they don't need income documentation. Sometimes they need a lot of income documentation. And sometimes they need copies of insurance cards and that kind of thing. Generally, most applications can be faxed from a doctor's office. However, there's a couple that they want the hard copy, so you have to mail it in. And for distribution, often the medication is shipped to the patient's home. Sometimes it's shipped to the prescribing doctor's office. Occasionally, there is a pharmacy card that the patient will receive, and so they can just go to the pharmacy and get it, like their other medications. So, income. Usually, it's from about 138% to 500% of federal poverty level. Some are even higher. And the 138 is the Medicaid eligibility limit. That does not necessarily apply for Medicare patients, but they would also have to, if their income is that low, probably have a denial letter for low-income subsidy, because these programs are going to want the patients to have applied for and be denied LIS. So that income range is like 16.8 to 62,450 for an individual. Most of them use like 300% of the federal poverty level. Like I said, most require no RX insurance, but a lot of them allow Medicare D patients to apply, but the additional requirements can vary by program. There's a couple of them out there that doesn't really care whether you have insurance or not. They will help you. So those are out there, but they're fairly rare. So documents. I would say of course, need a completed application. A lot of the programs require a separate prescription, usually written for a 90-day supply or 3 months, with 3 refills. That is 1 year's worth of medication. And generally, some sort of income verification. It varies by program. Usually, if somebody has a tax return, that is kind of like the gold standard for income documentation. If they don't, SSA benefit letter, IRS 4506T if they don't file taxes. If they've got nothing, quite often a statement from the doctor will suffice, indicating that they have no income. So it just really depends, once again, on the program. There's, especially for Medicare D patients, some of the PAPs require an additional information release form or an attestation form. It just depends. So how do you apply? Well, like I said, application, and it almost always has to be signed by both the patient and the doctor. Like I said, sometimes often require a separate prescription, although quite often it is part of the application. So the prescription is actually part of the application. So if the application is going to be faxed in with the attachments, it has to come from the doctor's office. It won't be accepted if it comes from Kinko's. It needs to come from the doctor's office with a fax transmittal sheet on doctor's letterhead. And once the patient has been approved, or denied, the doctor and the patient are going to be notified in writing. So the PAPs usually provide a 90-day supply of medication. That is not always the case. There's a couple of insulin programs that provide a 4-month supply of medication. I've even seen assistance programs provide a 1-year supply of medication, but that's very rare. The medications are usually sent to the patient's home, but a lot of programs require to be sent to the doctor's office, or you get pharmacy cards. And the refill procedures vary considerably. A lot of programs have just a phone number that the patient can call and request a refill. Some require that the doctor place that call to request a refill. And some of them require that the doctor request a refill form that the program will fax to the doctor, and then the doctor has to complete and fax back. So, you know, it goes from easy to hard. So for Medicare Part D, a lot of programs have procedures and exceptions for Medicare Part D beneficiaries. A lot of the programs have what's called an out-of-pocket requirement, where the patient has to have spent some set amount of money out of pocket before they're going to be eligible for this program. And that can be a set dollar amount, or it could be a percentage of the patient's household income. It just really varies by program. It used to be that there were a lot of programs that required the patient to be in the donut hole. That's generally not as common now. I think there may be a couple of them that still have that requirement. If the patient's income is low enough, they are going to have to apply for and be denied the low-income subsidy. And once again, usually that enrollment for Medicare patients is good until the end of the year. And then they have to requalify for the program. So for generic medications, almost always generics are not available through an assistance program. So, you know, Medicare D, because it does generally a pretty good job of covering lower cost generic medications. But there are instances where, you know, you'll find a specific generic medication is like a tier 3 or tier 4 medication. And it might be cheaper to have the patient not use the insurance for that medication. There's a lot of generic medications that are available for, like, you know, $4 for a 30-day or $10 for a 90-day at Target and Walmart. And so I would take a look at that. There's also a website called goodrx.com that is very good at finding local or discounted prices at local retail pharmacies. And it looks through all the different discount cards and coupons and picks out the cheapest ones at the local pharmacies. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at goodrx.com and playing around with it. I know just for personally, my mother had a generic medication that was a tier 4 medication on her formulary, and they wanted to charge her like $120 for, and I was able to get her a discount coupon through GoodRx and got that medication for $18. So That does happen. The other discount program that I refer to people to a lot is the Washington Prescription Drug Program, their discount card. And you can get information from that and sign people up for that discount card at www.rx.wa.gov. They have really good prices on really cheap medications. So, if you have somebody who is not on Part D, that can be a good place to go for things like, atorvastatin or metformin, really low-cost generics. So is there any kind of other help just besides those things? And actually there is. There are copay assistance foundations. These are private foundations that are in the business of making grants to individuals to cover the copays for medications that directly treat a covered condition. Okay, and so let's say you have a patient who has asthma. You can look to see if any of these copay assistance foundations have money available for asthma diagnoses. And there's a huge list of diagnoses that you can take a look at. So the best tool that I know of for finding money through these programs, it's the Fund Finder tool, and the link to the Fund Finder is in the PowerPoint presentation. You have to create an account in order to use this tool. But it's really easy to do, and one of the nice things is you can set alerts for the tool to notify you if a medication disease opens up for new enrollments. So that's handy if you have a lot of patients with a specific condition. Having that notification that, hey, there's money here is helpful. Normally, the grants that are provided are good for 12 months. So for Medicare patients, that's very helpful. They don't have to requalify necessarily on January 1st, and there's no there's no out-of-pocket requirement to access these like there is for some of the assistance programs. There are income limits though, and that you'll find that information on the individual foundation's website. So is there anything else? Yeah, there's savings cards, and they can be used instead of insurance. They can't be used with insurance. And we have already talked about those websites. The other thing you can do is actually at the pharmacy, you can ask for a cash discount. And it's not well known that the cash prices for medications can vary widely between pharmacies. You can have the same medication at a pharmacy on one side of the street will be $10, and across the street it will be $50. And especially if you're a cash paying customer, unless you shop around, you're not going to know that. So ask for the cash discount, shop around, use GoodRx, use the Washington Prescription Drug Program to see where the best prices are going to be. So, some frequently asked questions. One of the biggest product categories that I am asked about is insulin. And unfortunately, insulin is really hard to get for Medicare D patients, and we'll talk about that in just a second. There are 3 programs that provide insulin. There's Lilly Cares, which provides Humalog and Basaglar. And Basaglar is it's a biosimilar to Lantus, which means it's the same insulin molecule. So it's roughly equivalent to Lantus. Novo Nordisk has Novolog, Levemir, and Tresiba, and Sanofi has Lantus, Toujeo, and Apidra. And so those are like long-acting, short-acting, quick-acting medications. And so now all of these programs will help people who have Medicare. However, there's a big however. For Medicare D patients, they all have pretty significant out-of-pocket requirements. And you can kind of think of these as like a spend down, is that you have to have spent so much money out of pocket on all of your other prescriptions this calendar year before you're eligible. So for Lilly, that number is $1,100. For Novo Nordisk, that's $1,000. And for Sanofi, that number is 5% of your annual household income. And this is really tough for seniors who have fixed incomes and have like maybe just hit the donut hole because they would not have met these out-of-pocket requirements. The only thing that is really available is that Walmart sells like regular insulin, NPH, which is kind of a 12-hour insulin, and a mix of the two for $25 a vial at Walmart. So, and it's like an older insulin. It's not as it doesn't manage diabetes as well. So that's what we have available for insulins. The other one that I get a lot of questions about is inhalers, and almost all of the inhaler programs require some sort of out-of-pocket, spend. AstraZeneca for Symbicort has a requirement of 3% of the patient's annual income. GSK, which is Advair and Flovent and Ventolin, has an out-of-pocket requirement of $600. The one that doesn't is Merck, and they provide Asthma-Nex, Dulera, Proventil. They have no out-of-pocket requirement. However, they do require that the patient apply and be denied, and then they'll send them a form that they have to complete to resubmit to the company in order to get the medication. So it's a bit of a two-step process. And, I make sure that when I'm helping with people with this, they're aware of that, and I tell them when they get that form, give me a call back. I'll walk them through it. But it is available, and it has a pretty high income limit too. Teva, which provides Air Duo, ProAir, and QVAR, excludes Medicare D patients from coverage. So, but you can usually find an equivalent medication that's on a different program. The last category that I get a lot of questions about are anticoagulants and antiplatelets. So Brilinta from AstraZeneca has the out-of-pocket requirement of 3%. Boehringer Ingelheim, which provides Pradaxa, has no restrictions for Medicare D patients, and the income limit for that is 300%. Eliquis requires 3% of the patient's gross annual income be spent out of pocket, and Johnson & Johnson for Xarelto also has an out-of-pocket requirement of 4%. So, you know, when I'm talking to patients about this, I let them know about the Pradaxa and tell them that if they want to do that, that they need to have that conversation with their doctor about whether or not that would be an acceptable alternative. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And a couple of questions. Do all programs have financial eligibility? Yes, they all do. It's going to vary by program, though. And do the programs require citizenship? A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. But since your clients are going to be generally citizens or green card holders, this shouldn't come up very often. So if you have any questions around that, just pick up the phone and give me a call. So when should a SHIBA volunteer refer a client from assistance? I would say, you know, whenever the client indicates difficulty affording their medication, you know, let us do the work of screening the client for assistance. Just you know, refer them directly to us. And what's the procedure? I've got a couple of slides that are going to talk about that. And how do I know the outcome of the referral? If the referral comes directly from a SHIBA volunteer, we have that information, and then we can give you a call to let you know what the status is. But if you just give the patient my information or Kelly's information, then we're not gonna know really where that came from, and we're not gonna be able to reach back out to let you know. So if you want to know what the status is, send us the referral directly. And how do I refer clients for assistance in Western Washington? Well, you refer them directly to me, and my contact information is on the slide in front of you. The information that I need is the client's contact information, medication list, or at least the name of the medication requiring assistance, the prescription insurance information. Does the patient have Medicare Part D, or are they uninsured for prescriptions? And income information if you have it. Sometimes you don't, which is fine. You know, but you can just go ahead and send me all that information. For Eastern Washington, you can refer clients to Kelly Armstrong, and her contact information is on the slide now in front of you, and she just needs the exact same information as I did. So I hope this information has been helpful. If you have any questions at all, pick up the phone and call me at 206-518-0839. Thanks.